Hello, Lee Freeman here. We're at 350 Northwood Avenue, the current home of the Florence Lauderdale Public Library, where I work in my day job. In this episode, we're going to talk about the history of 350 Northwood Avenue, in particular the Lauderdale Clubhouse from the 1890s. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to check out our YouTube channel and subscribe and like us on Facebook. 350 Northwood Avenue, the current home of the Florence Lauderdale Public Library, has actually hosted many different buildings over the years. Originally, this lot was owned by Ferdinand Senoner, who was the Italian immigrant engineer and surveyor who, on behalf of the Cypress Land Company, did the original surveys of the city of Florence in 1818 with Madison County surveyor Hunter Peel. As part payment for their work in surveying the town, the land company paid Senoner and Peel with lots in the town. Peel sold his and moved back to Madison County, to Huntsville, and Ferdinand Senoner built the house on his. So this lot where the library was between roughly 1825 and 1859 was the Ferdinand Senoner home site. Senoner moved here from Huntsville in 1825, and then the Senoner family moved to Memphis in 1859, or 1858, and Senoner died in 1859 in Memphis. So this was originally his lot. I can't tell you exactly what was here until in the intervening years, but I can tell you that in 1889, the Lauderdale Club was incorporated. In the summer of that year, and, quote, the leading businessmen of the city are members of that club, unquote. The membership fee was $100. And according to a January 1890 notice, anybody that joined before the membership was completed could save the initiation fee of $50. Now, I don't know who the members of this club were, but the Board of Management was W.O. Skelton, president of the North Alabama Furnace Foundry and Land Company, J.H.H. Figgett, the president of the Florence Investment Company, Samuel J. Graham, the general manager of the Lauderdale Manufacturing Company, Florence Mayor Robert Andrews, he was mayor from 1888 to 1897, and Joseph Button, a Virginia native and Florence real estate stock and bond broker, who was the club's secretary-treasurer, and the Honorable J.J. Mitchell, a Lauderdale County probate judge. And the club was a business, as we said, it was a club for the leading businessmen of the city. By June of 1889, the Lauderdale Club decided that it needed a clubhouse. In May of 1890, Joseph Button was interviewed by the Nashville American newspaper, which reported that, quote, the club is necessary in a large measure, aside from the purely local demand for such a place, because the Florentines are short of accommodations for taking good care of the constantly increasing stream of visitors who drop into Florence for investments, unquote. And what you may not be aware of is that between roughly 1886 and the mid-late 1890s was a period of an intense industrial boom in Florence. So certainly by this 1889 period, June of 1889, investors and real estate developers and manufacturers and bankers were coming from all points to Florence. And basically the Lauderdale Club decided they needed a place that these guys could stay. There weren't enough hotels, and they might not be up to the standard some of these magnates were used to. So they decided they'd build this nice clubhouse. To that end, on June 22, 1889, the Florence Herald reported that, quote, the Lauderdale Club has purchased a very desirable lot, 159 feet by 136 feet, on the corner of Tuscaloosa and Market Streets, where they will erect a handsome clubhouse. And at that time, 1889, the street address was 320 North Market Street. Of course, it is now 350 Northwood Avenue. The new clubhouse would cost approximately $9,000, and the well-known Florence builder, J.C. Jones, was the contractor. The plans were drawn up by Florence architects Dittrich and Kirby. Now, Jones had originally signed a forfeit that meant he would complete the work in 90 days. However, the construction actually took about 6 months. Pinch and Jordan had the contract for the plastering, and Ed Rash and Brothers had the contract to put up, quote, a handsome iron fence around the property, unquote. So it had this nice wrought iron fence around it. The foundation was of limestone, and the clubhouse yard was filled with dirt from a recent grading of East Tennessee Street with a dressed stone coping put in. and this property was also one of the early Florence properties that had sidewalks around it. Several $1,000s were set aside to purchase furniture for the clubhouse, which was purchased in Nashville by Secretary-Treasurer Joseph Button with the assistance of D.S. Wary of the Florence Furniture Company. And the Florence Herald described the clubhouse in January of 1890. They wrote, quote, "The clubhouse, quote, is 2 stories and a half, surmounted by a picturesque minaret, or tower. The Market Street entrance is decorated with many handsome columns and a large bay window, which reaches above the top of the building and ends in an open tower or circular balcony that greatly enhances the beauty of the edifice. The exterior is all that could be desired in elegance, strength, and grace, and the coloring is after the most approved, chaste, and harmonious designs. Wide, windswept verandas are on 2 sides and are on both stories. There is a roomy entrance or vestibule connecting with a cloakroom. This opens into a grand-looking hall. From this entrance is made into the large and luxurious smoking room and the superb reading room and ample dining hall. Further on, separated by closets, are the bar, butler's pantry, kitchen laboratory, storerooms, wine rooms, etc., and in the rear a billiard room elegantly appointed, 22 by 31 feet. All of these rooms are well lighted by day, aglow with electric light by night. Soft lounges, deep cushioned chairs, real sleepy hollows abound, and everything in the way of hangings, furniture decorations are to be of the most tasteful, elegant, and costful description. The second floor is equally handsome and devoted to parlors, private dining rooms, ladies' cloakroom, bathrooms, dressing rooms, and sleeping chambers. There are electric lights, hot and cold water, electric bells throughout the entire building, and it is indeed a thing of beauty," unquote. Nobody writes like that anymore. According to the Florence Herald, the club would have, quote, "reading rooms, billiard room, restaurant, and other conveniences," unquote, which were to include, quote, "electrical appliances, including annunciators," which were devices that give a visual indication as to which of a number of electric circuits have operated, such as an indicator in a hotel showing in which room a bell has been rung. Return calls, incandescent lights, and it had 75 incandescent lights. The clubhouse had burglar alarms, fire alarms, etc. S.C. Trowerman of Cincinnati sold the club 1 billiard table, 1 pool table, and a refrigerator for the bar and restaurant. The club also actually considered at one point buying a steam yacht for cruising the river, but apparently they opted not to do so. Now, the interior of the 2-story clubhouse was constructed of native hardwoods with a hard oil finish and included beautifully carved mantels with large mirrors above, and the hearth was laid with embossed tile with beautiful figures. The clubhouse, which included a tower on the northwest corner from which the view of Florence was said to be excellent, was apparently divided into suites of apartments on the second floor for these traveling businessmen to stay in. One of these rooms, by 1892, was occupied by Niall Childs, N.C. Elting, of the Elting branch of the First National Bank fame, and his wife, Annie Van Sickler Elting. The Eltings had moved to Florence from New York in 1889. He was an industrialist and a banker, and apparently they had a suite in the clubhouse. And after the clubhouse shut down, I don't know exactly how many years it operated as the clubhouse, but it looks like from sometime around 1892 to the 1930s, it's 1933 in fact. Mrs. Elting died in 1905 and Mr. Elting died in 1933, and the Eltings lived there apparently as their private residence after the clubhouse shut down. I want to talk about something that happened on this lot that you may not be aware of. I wasn't until several years ago. There was actually a murder that occurred here one night in June of 1938. It seems that James Thomas Crouch, 23-year-old Florence interior decorator, was killed by Emmett Cap Peden and his wife Virgie Peden right here in front of the Brown Service Funeral Home, probably closer to the Wilson Park side. And I should say this is public record. It's recorded in both the Florence Times and Florence Herald of June 1938. So if anybody wants to read the details, we have the file at the library upstairs, but it seems that James Thomas Crouch and several of his friends were riding around one night looking for a place to park. They wanted to park near the Florence Elks Club, which was behind the current John McKinley Federal Post Office, but that a dance was going on there and they couldn't find parking space, so they drove to the point of the shooting. According to according to William White, one of the young men in the car, Mrs. Peden is said to have walked up to the running board of the car and made certain accusations against Crouch, and during the argument which followed, Emmett Peden ran up to the car with a pistol in his hand. White stated that Crouch fired at the ground in front of Peden in an attempt to scare him away. Peden fired back, the shot striking Crouch. According to Mrs. Peden, the young men tried to force her into the car with them. Her husband was on a bench in Wilson Park, waiting on her to come back from the post office. She yells for him to run over, that she's being assaulted, so he does, and then this firefight breaks out, with the result that James Thomas Crouch was shot to death. He was taken to ECM Hospital, but died from his wounds. Later that night, Emmett Peden turned himself in, and as a result, after the case went to trial, he was convicted of second-degree manslaughter and sentenced to 23 years in a federal prison, and his wife, Virgie Peden, was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in a federal prison. So a very interesting yet tragic murder that happened right in front of the Brown Service Funeral Home in front of Wilson Park on a June night in 1938.